Roaring Twenties and Great Depression Time Capsule. Over here we have a painting of the trombone. This painting is from the Harlem Renaissance, which lasted from the early 1920s until the early 1930s. It all started with the Great Migration, when loads of black people moved north to escape slavery and start a new life with paying jobs. The Harlem Renaissance was full of different types of art, such as music, literature, and painting, created by all sorts of people. This painting combines jazz music and artwork that was created during the Harlem Renaissance. Eventually, the Harlem Renaissance ended when the Great Depression began. Some of the most remembered people of the Harlem Renaissance were Louis Armstrong, the amazing trumpet player, Langston Hughes, an excellent poet, and Zora Neale Hurston, a wonderful writer. Over here, we have a moonshine bottle that's being crossed out. This sign represents Prohibition. Prohibition happened between the early 1920s and the mid-1930s and was the 18th Amendment. Prohibition is when the manufacturing, selling, and transportation of alcohol was prohibited, partly because men had been going to work drunk and beating their wives. Signs like this could have been posted around towns. Some effects of the prohibition were that organized crime rates went up, bootleggers and runners had lots of business. One of the most famous bootleggers was Al Capone, a young man who was a billionaire because of his crimes. Next, we have this photo of a very poor man. Many people in the Great Depression were jobless because when the stock market crashed, most companies had to drop employees in order to stay in business. Over 13 million people lost their jobs. Many men needed a job to be able to feed their families. A lot of men and women would stand in the street holding signs pleading for work. All of this was happening because the stock market crashed and most banks closed. The stock market is when a business needs money to run, so they sell portions of their company to the public. The public can sell it if it goes up in value and make some money. It crashed when too many people bought stocks on the margin, which is where you basically use a loan to buy a stock. After the stock market crashed, lots of people were taking out their money from the banks because they didn't really trust the banks anymore, and they wanted to have their money close to them. The banks didn't have enough money for so many people to be drawing at one time, so they had to close. Next, we have some FDR's alphabet soup. Here we go. And we got some ingredients. Anywho, FDR was nicknamed the Alphabet Soup President because he set up the New Deal. The New Deal was lots of organizations to help the U.S. get out of the Depression. Those organizations were abbreviated into acronyms, such as the AAA, the FDIC, and the CCC. The AAA was the Agriculture Adjustment Administration, which helped farmers sell some of their surplus crops and lands to the government. The FDIC was something to help the banks have enough money for all the people who deposited the money into their money into the banks. The CCC is an organization that helped the people who were 18 to 16 get jobs and paid them for their work. Next, we have some old cardboard. This piece of cardboard is from a shack in Hooverville. During the Great Depression, there was over 1 million people living in Hooverville. A Hooverville is a collection of shacks made from old things such as cardboard or anything else that could be found. People who got evicted for not being able to pay their rent or mortgage during the Great Depression lived in these types of shacks if they couldn't move in with their family. An actual name for the Hooverville is a shantytown, but since President Herbert Hoover didn't do as much as they would have liked, they got nicknamed Hoovervilles. Next, we have some homeless symbols to help other homeless people. When people were homeless, Sometimes they went to other people's houses to see if they could get food or a room to stay for the night. These types of symbols were left at left after one or two people had gone to someone's house to help the next person who came. The symbols were left at places such as the fence or the curb. The symbols told the followers what to expect from that house, whether the people in the house were nice and let you stay overnight, or they would try to shoot you. Another name for homeless people are Okies, because a lot of homeless people came from Oklahoma when the Dust Bowl moved west. Next, we have some dust from the Dust Bowl. It's in a little bag so that it doesn't disintegrate or dissolve or anything like that. The Dust Bowl began when farmers moved Midwest and started plowing up the topsoil. They were fine for the first few years, but a drought began and dried up all the loose topsoil. Small twisters that had always been there blew up the dust. These tornadoes got bigger and bigger, and soon they were huge, swallowing towns up whole. Many people got dust pneumonia, and most died. The states that were most affected by the Dust Bowl were Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, New Mexico, and Colorado. As a result of the dust storms, people moved west. The government didn't think the Dust Bowl was such a big deal until a huge storm made it all the way north to New York City. Eventually, the Dust Bowl ended. After 10 years of storms, it rained. Okay, and last but definitely not least, we have a headpiece that a flapper might have worn in the Great Depression. It's very purple and sparkly and kind of rebellious. Okay, this is a headpiece that a flapper might have worn. A flapper is a young woman who was a rebel during the Roaring Twenties. The Roaring Twenties was a time filled with lots of dancing, music, and fun as the people of the United States celebrated the end of World War I. Lots of people, especially women, started acting rebellious, such as flappers. Flappers wore dresses that showed their ankles. They wore long beads and bobbed their hair. They didn't want to watch children and do housework all day. They wanted to have fun. Anyway, thanks for watching. Seeing my Roaring 20s and Great Depression time.